The legend lives on, but what happened to the girl they tried to bury alive will shock you. From death's claws to unstoppable hope, her story will leave you speechless. Watch till the end. Luana stood tall on the grand stage, her voice strong as she shared her story of survival to an audience filled with leaders, activists, and survivors. She had become a symbol of hope, a woman who had once been buried alive but clawed her way back and built an empire from nothing. Cameras flashed, hands applauded, but just as she paused to breathe between words, her eyes locked on someone in the crowd. His face, partly covered by a scarf, partly turned, sent a chill through her spine. It was Rugari, one of the masked men who had tried to bury her. For a second, her heart stopped. Her voice trembled slightly, but when she looked again, he was gone, vanished. The past she thought was buried had returned. Back in her hotel room, Luana couldn't shake the image. She barely slept. By morning, she had hired a private investigator. Days later, the news came. Rugari was alive and part of an underground network trafficking women. The second man, Tamzo, had been found dead the previous year under mysterious circumstances. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was bigger. Her pain was only one piece of a much darker puzzle. To find the truth, she returned to Msuba, the land where everything had once crumbled. She wore a disguise, hiding her identity from those who might recognize her. She visited Kalembe in prison, the man who had helped plan her downfall. He looked weak, almost broken, but his eyes still carried pride. "You think I was the mastermind?" He coughed. "You don't know half of it." He whispered a name, Nyari, Luana's old friend, the woman who betrayed her. Her hands shook as she left. Nyari's betrayal ran deeper than she ever imagined. Using the investigator's help, Luana traced Nyari. She had faked her escape and was living under a new name in another country, running fake orphanages and exploiting innocent lives. Luana didn't want revenge. She wanted justice. She reached out to Boke, the man who once saved her life. Now a humanitarian leader, Boke had the resources to help. Together, they built a case. Survivors stepped forward. Voices rose. A movement began. To catch Nyari, Luana took on a new identity. She posed as a wealthy investor and set up a meeting to support one of Nyari's fake projects. Nyari didn't recognize her. Hidden cameras captured every word, every lie, every threat. Then, just as Nyari signed the fake deal, Interpol agents burst in. She tried to escape, but Boke was waiting outside. She was caught. The video went viral. Her empire crumbled, but Rugari was still out there. He kidnapped young girls and sent Luana a message: "Come alone, or they vanish." She went, with Boke secretly tracking her. In an abandoned warehouse, she faced Rugari. Police stormed in, saving the girls. Rugari tried to flee and was shot. Luana later launched an alliance to fight trafficking, named after Tamso. Even Kalembe, watching from prison, broke down and sent out a public apology. Luana returned to Dolemba and opened a school for girls on the very land she was once buried. As she cut the ribbon, the world watched, not a victim, but a warrior. After spotting Rugari at her speech, Luana couldn't rest. The image of his face haunted her day and night. Quietly, without alerting the public or even her closest allies, she hired a private investigator to track him down. She needed answers, and she needed them fast. The investigator moved silently, digging into hidden records, false identities, and whispers in the dark corners of several countries. A week later, the report landed on her desk, and what it revealed chilled her to the bone. Rugari hadn't vanished. He had gone underground, slipping through borders, changing names, and hiding in plain sight. But he wasn't alone. The investigator discovered something even more disturbing. Tamzo, the second masked man from that terrible night, had been found dead just a year earlier. His body was discovered behind a warehouse in a remote village, tied up, bruised, and barely recognizable. No one claimed him. No one investigated deeply. It was treated as a gang-related killing. But Luana knew someone had silenced him. Someone was tying up loose ends. As she flipped through the rest of the file, her hands trembled. Rugari wasn't just hiding. He was active. He was deeply involved in a secret criminal network known for trafficking young women across borders, fake job offers, forced labor, and missing girls. All of it connected to Rugari and a larger chain of monsters. The evidence pointed to illegal clinics, fake orphanages, and business fronts used to move women from village to city, from one country to the next. Luana stared at the photos and names, her heart pounding. This wasn't just about her survival anymore. It wasn't just about revenge or even justice for herself, her story, her pain, her near death. It was only one part of a much darker web. The people who had buried her alive were part of a system that was still alive, still hurting others. And now that she had risen, they were watching her, threatened by her voice, afraid of her power. For years, she thought she had escaped, but now she realized she was never meant to survive. Her survival had ruined someone's plan, and they were still cleaning up the mess. Tamzo's death was proof. Rugari's appearance wasn't random. It was a warning, a reminder that the shadows from her past were not done with her yet. But Luana didn't break. Instead, something inside her hardened. This was bigger than her story. It was about the voiceless girls who vanished without a trace, the families who searched in vain, the buried secrets that had never seen the light. And she knew then she had to go deeper. She had to expose every name, every face, every hand that was part of this cruel chain. Her mission wasn't over. It had just begun. Luana knew she couldn't fight the darkness from a distance. To truly understand what had happened to her and who was behind it, she had to return to the place where it all began, Msuba, the village that buried her, betrayed her, and left her for dead. Disguised in a simple wrapper, headscarf and large sunglasses, she moved through the dusty roads unnoticed. Her name still carried weight in Msuba, but not everyone knew she had survived, let alone risen to fame. She needed answers, and there was only one person who could give them to her, Kalembe. Kalembe, the man who had once held power over her life, the one who helped plan her downfall. He was now a prisoner, locked away in a damp, forgotten cell on the edge of the village. Time had not been kind to him. His once proud face was hollow and pale. His hands trembled as he held the metal bars. He was sick, thin, and broken in body, but not in pride. When Luana stepped into the room, he looked at her with a flicker of surprise, but no guilt. "You're not supposed to be here," he muttered. "I need the truth," she replied firmly. He laughed, a dry, bitter sound that echoed off the walls. "You think you know the truth? You think it was all me?" Luana stood still, watching him closely. "I was a pawn," Kalembe admitted, his voice rough. "A willing one, yes, but not the mastermind. There are names, powerful names you never heard. I was just the face they used to silence you." Luana's stomach turned. For years, she believed Kalembe and Nyari had destroyed her out of jealousy and greed. But now she saw it wasn't that simple. Kalembe had been used, just like her. "What about Nyari?" she asked. He chuckled again. "Nyari was no fool. She knew the game better than all of us. She didn't just betray you, Luana. She was playing a deeper game. She had connections. She made deals with devils." Luana clenched her fists. Kalembe didn't give her all the names, but he gave her enough to know that the rot went deeper than she had ever imagined. Nyari wasn't just a traitor. She was part of a larger machine, a machine that used women like tools and threw them away when they were no longer useful. Kalembe leaned in closer, his voice weak. "If you go after them, be ready. They're bigger than you think. They don't just kill, they erase." Luana left the prison with her mind spinning. The real enemy wasn't just one person. It was a hidden network built on lies, power, and pain. Msuba had been just one stop in their long trail of destruction. And now, the truth was calling her to dig deeper. Her past had almost buried her, but now she was ready to bury the truth's enemies instead. Luana couldn't sleep. Kalembe's words kept ringing in her head. "There are names you never knew." She started digging, using contacts she had built over the years and the help of the private investigator. The deeper she searched, the clearer the picture became. Nyari had not just betrayed her. She had vanished into another life, under a fake name, in a new country. Nyari had rebuilt herself, and she wasn't hiding in shame. She was thriving. Luana found proof that Nyari had partnered with powerful businessmen in a wealthy coastal city. On the surface, she ran an international charity supporting orphaned girls. But behind closed doors, it was a front for something far darker: human trafficking, illegal adoptions, and forced labor. Her so-called orphanages were nothing more than holding centers. Luana's heart ached with rage. The woman who once called her sister had become a predator of the innocent. What shocked Luana most was how cleverly Nyari had played the system. She had faked a story of being a victim, claimed she was wrongly accused in Msuba, and used that pity to attract foreign donors and high-profile connections. Articles praised her as a survivor-turned humanitarian. She appeared in press conferences, smiled in photographs with ministers, and gave speeches about rescuing girls. All lies. Every word. Luana collected documents, photos, and testimony from people who once worked under Nyari, maids, drivers, even a former guard. Most were afraid to speak, but a few brave ones told the truth. One woman, Kemi, revealed how she had watched Nyari sell off 3 girls to foreign sponsors. Another recalled how Nyari punished anyone who questioned her orders, threatening to deport or silence them. The more stories Luana heard, the more her resolve grew. This wasn't about revenge anymore, it was justice. For the girls locked behind fake orphanage gates, for the women used and discarded, for the families tricked and torn apart. Luana wasn't going to let Nyari hide behind her stolen identity and fake smiles. She began building a case, quietly collecting everything she would need to expose the operation to the world. She knew it wouldn't be easy. Nyari had money, influence, and a strong network. One wrong move and the case would vanish. Or worse, the girls still trapped would be moved. But Luana had already survived the grave. There was no fear left in her. She moved with care, studied Nyari's schedule, and mapped her operations. She even discovered the offshore accounts where donation money was funneled. In her quiet moments, Luana would stare at Nyari's face on her screen, the same face that once smiled beside her during childhood dances in Msuba, now sat in boardroom, signing papers that destroyed lives. Luana whispered to herself, "You buried me once, Nyari, but I'm the one holding the shovel now." And just like that, her mission became clear. She would not rest until every girl Nyari had harmed was free. Not through violence, not through anger, but through truth. Because the most powerful justice is the kind that turns silence into thunder. Luana knew she couldn't fight this battle alone. The weight of everything she had uncovered was too heavy to carry by herself. That's when she reached out to Boke, the man who had once pulled her from the edge of death and given her the strength to rise again. Over the years, Boke had built his name as a respected humanitarian. He ran safe houses for abused women and children and worked with global organizations to rescue victims of trafficking. When Luana told him everything, he didn't hesitate. He believed her instantly. Together, they formed a quiet alliance, one that operated in the shadows, but with a clear purpose: expose the truth and break the entire network piece by piece. Boke had contacts: lawyers, journalists, investigators, and even whistleblowers in law enforcement. Luana brought her fire, her first-hand experience, and the mountain of evidence she had gathered. Their mission wasn't just to stop Nyari or Rugari. It was to make sure no one else suffered as they had. They started with the survivors. Luana and Boke traveled to different cities, reaching out to shelters and clinics where victims often stayed hidden. It was painful work. Many were too scared to talk. Some had been silenced with threats, others with shame. But slowly, stories began to pour in. One girl recognized Rugari's name immediately. He had tricked her with promises of work and locked her in a warehouse for months. Another, a woman from Luana's own village, confessed she was once recruited by Nyari's so-called charity and ended up trafficked across borders. Each story made their case stronger. Boke arranged for counselors and legal support, ensuring that those who spoke were protected. Survivors who had once felt forgotten now found hope in Luana's courage. Word began to spread. More victims came forward, some from Msuba, others from places Luana had never even heard of. Patterns began to form. The connections between Rugari's smuggling routes and Nyari's fake orphanages became clearer. They documented every detail: names, dates, locations. Boke's team of lawyers began preparing charges while trusted journalists were fed just enough information to start asking the right questions. They didn't rush. Every move was calculated. They knew they were taking on people with money, influence, and the power to erase evidence overnight. But they also knew the truth was stronger. One day, Boke looked at Luana and said, "You're not just telling your story anymore. You're giving others the strength to tell theirs." And it was true. Luana was no longer just the survivor from Msuba. She had become a symbol, a voice for the voiceless. Every new survivor that stepped forward was a victory. Every tear shared, every memory spoken aloud, was a crack in the wall of silence built by fear. The movement was no longer just about justice. It was about healing, about taking back power stolen in the dark. Luana and Boke stood together, not as victims, but as warriors. And though the fight was far from over, they knew they were not alone anymore. The world was finally beginning to listen. Luana knew that if she wanted to bring Nyari down, she had to walk straight into the spider's web. So she became someone else, a wealthy investor with a false name, expensive clothes, and a convincing backstory. She learned the language of business, practiced her accent, and surrounded herself with hired professionals who played their roles perfectly. Everything had to look real. She set up fake company documents, arranged luxury meetings, and through quiet channels, sent word to Nyari's people that she was interested in funding an orphanage expansion project. It didn't take long before Nyari took the bait. The meeting was set in a high-end hotel in a foreign country. Boke's team wired the suite with hidden cameras and audio devices. Every detail was planned. Luana waited at the table, her heart pounding, but her face calm. When the door opened, Nyari walked in, looking confident, well-dressed, and as powerful as ever. She carried herself like a woman who believed she could never be touched. And in that moment, she didn't recognize Luana. She only saw a rich woman, a potential partner, another pocket to line. Nyari began talking, fast and smooth. She described the fake orphanage project as a noble cause, showing glossy brochures filled with smiling children who didn't exist. Then, without hesitation, she shifted to her real pitch, how the investor could make double her money by moving the right people across borders, using the orphanage as cover. She laughed as she spoke, throwing around names of businessmen, government officials, and corrupt police who were all part of the system. She bragged about how easy it was to make people disappear, how simple it was to silence anyone who asked questions. Luana listened, nodding, pretending to be impressed, all while the hidden camera captured every word. But inside, her anger burned. Hearing Nyari talk so casually about destroying lives reminded her of everything she had survived, and all the women who never got the chance to fight back. Still, she stayed calm, professional, never once giving herself away. The meeting lasted an hour. Nyari even offered to introduce her to clients who would help move things faster. When it was over, they shook hands. Nyari walked out with a smile, believing she had won again. But she had no idea she had just confessed to crimes on tape: human trafficking, bribery, conspiracy, and fraud, all in her own words. As soon as the door closed, Boke's team emerged. They packed up the equipment, backed up the recordings, and secured the evidence. Luana sat down, breathing heavily, her hands shaking slightly, not from fear, but from relief. She had done it. She had looked into the eyes of her enemy and stayed strong. The trap had worked. The spider had walked straight into it, blind and proud. Now, with the truth recorded, they were ready for the next step. Justice was no longer a dream. It was finally within reach. The final meeting was set. Nyari arrived dressed in a white suit, confident and proud, ready to sign a multi-million-dollar deal with the fake foundation Luana had created. The hotel boardroom sparkled with elegance, full of fake assistants, documents, and props that made the deal look official. Luana sat at the head of the table, dressed sharply, her posture calm, her eyes watching every move. Nyari had no idea she was seconds away from losing everything. Just as Nyari picked up the pen to sign, the doors burst open. Interpol agents flooded in, sharp suits, armed officers, and the blinding flashes of camera lights. For a moment, Nyari froze, stunned. Then panic took over. She pushed the table, sending documents flying, and sprinted towards a hidden exit only she thought she knew. But the path had already been discovered. At the end of the hallway, Boke stood blocking the way. His presence was calm, but firm. "It's over," he said. Nyari turned, looking for another escape, but there was none. The agents surrounded her. She screamed, fought, threatened, but it was useless. They handcuffed her and walked her out through the hotel lobby, where cameras rolled and people whispered. For the first time in years, Nyari looked powerless. Outside, reporters gathered quickly. Within minutes, news of the arrest hit the internet. But what truly exploded was the footage Luana's team released. The video showed Nyari clearly offering illegal deals, bragging about trafficking, and mocking the people she had hurt. People were horrified. The video was shared across every social platform. It played on news stations, filled blogs, and dominated conversations. People could not believe how far her darkness had reached, or how long she had hidden behind her charm. But the biggest wave came from survivors. One by one, women from different countries started speaking out. Some had escaped Rugari's camps. Others had been victims in Nyari's orphanage scam. They shared names, photos, dates, and they did it using one powerful hashtag, #buried but alive. The phrase captured what so many had felt, buried by shame, fear, and silence, but still alive and finally ready to rise. The hashtag spread like wildfire. Celebrities reposted it. Activists organized marches. Survivors found strength in each other's story. What started as Luana's private mission had turned into a global movement. Governments opened investigations. Border officials arrested more members of the network. Anonymous tips poured in. Meanwhile, Nyari sat in a prison cell, alone, without her usual power or protection. Her empire had collapsed in hours. The same media she once manipulated now showed her downfall on every screen. She was no longer a mastermind. She was a criminal, fully exposed. Luana watched quietly, not with revenge in her heart, but with peace. She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She simply felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The truth had come out. Justice had begun. And the voices that were once silenced were now louder than ever. Rugari wasn't finished. After Nyari's arrest, everyone thought the nightmare was over. But Rugari had one last cruel plan. He kidnapped a group of young girls from a remote village, the kind of place far from the city where help seemed distant. Then he sent a chilling message directly to Luana. Come alone, or they disappear forever. The words hit like a punch to her chest, but they also sparked a fierce determination inside her. Despite warnings from Boke and the police, Luana refused to let fear control her. She knew she had to face Rugari alone to save those innocent lives. Carefully, Luana prepared for the confrontation. Boke, wise and experienced, didn't want to leave her unprotected, so he insisted on tracking her every step. Using GPS, he stayed connected with Luana, ready to call for backup at a moment's notice. Luana disguised herself once again, blending into the shadows like before. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was a warrior walking into danger for the sake of others. She found the location Rugari had given, an old, abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, silent and eerie, with broken windows and rusted metal doors. Every sound echoed. Every shadow seemed to move. Luana's heart pounded, but she stayed calm. She could feel Rugari watching, waiting for her to make a mistake. Inside, Rugari revealed himself, cold and cruel as ever. He smirked, confident that this time he would win. The girls were hidden somewhere deep inside, frightened but alive. Rugari tried to intimidate Luana, warning her to back off, but she stood firm. She told him she was not afraid, that his evil would end today. The air was thick with tension, every second stretching like a tightrope. Unbeknownst to Rugari, Boke had arranged a hidden police team nearby, ready to move at Luana's signal. As the confrontation grew more dangerous, Luana managed to send a quiet call through her phone. Within moments, police officers burst through the doors. Rugari panicked and tried to run, but he was met with gunfire. He was shot while attempting to escape, collapsing before the officers could take him down fully. The police rushed to find the girls. One by one, they were brought out, terrified but safe. Tears flowed, hugs were shared, and the relief was overwhelming. Luana helped comfort them, promising a future where they would never suffer again. The village heard the news quickly, and hope spread like wildfire. For Luana, this was more than a rescue. It was a victory against the darkness that once buried her. Rugari's final game had failed, and the price he paid was his freedom. But more importantly, the girls were free to live again, to dream, to grow without fear. Boke met Luana outside the warehouse, their eyes reflecting the weight of what had just happened. They knew the fight wasn't over, but this battle was won. The story of survival and courage was no longer just hers. It belonged to every rescued girl, every family healed, and every voice raised against evil. Rugari's shadow was gone, but Luana's light was brighter than ever. After the final battle with Rugari, Luana knew the fight against trafficking was far from over. She decided to take her mission to a higher level, creating a new international alliance dedicated to ending human trafficking forever. She named the alliance after Tamzo, the second masked man who had died under mysterious circumstances, a man who never got the chance to find redemption, but whose story deserved to be remembered. By honoring Tamzo, Luana sent a powerful message. Even those lost to darkness could inspire change. The alliance quickly gained momentum. People from different countries, governments, and organizations joined forces, united by one goal: to stop trafficking and protect the vulnerable. Survivors stepped forward, sharing their stories to expose the cruelty hidden behind closed doors. The movement grew loud, unignorable, like a storm sweeping across borders. Awareness spread through social media, news outlets, and communities. Luana's voice became a beacon of hope, inspiring others to stand up and fight. Back in prison, Kalembe's life had taken a turn no one expected. Once cold and unrepentant, he now sat quietly in his cell, reflecting on everything he had done. For the first time, tears streamed down his face. The weight of his crimes crushed him, and guilt consumed his soul. He realized the destruction he had caused, not only to Luana, but to many others. His heart ached with regret for the choices that had led him here. From his prison cell, Kalembe wrote a public apology letter that shook the nation. He admitted his guilt fully and took responsibility for the pain he had caused. But more importantly, he pleaded with young men everywhere to never follow the path he chose. He warned them how easy it was to get lost in power, greed, and cruelty, and how hard it was to find a way back. His letter was raw and honest, a rare moment of vulnerability from a man who had once seemed untouchable. Kalembe's apology struck a chord. It became a lesson for many, a cautionary tale showing the consequences of evil choices. People discussed it widely, from school classrooms to government halls. His words added fuel to Luana's alliance, reminding everyone why the fight was necessary. It wasn't just about punishment, it was about change, healing, and preventing others from suffering the same fate. Meanwhile, Luana's alliance worked tirelessly. They created programs to rescue victims, provide counseling, and rebuild lives. They trained law enforcement to recognize trafficking signs and crack down on criminal networks. Governments passed stricter laws, and communities stood guard to protect their children. The alliance turned tragedy into action, giving power to survivors and hope to those still trapped. Luana often spoke about Tamzo, the man whose death had sparked this movement. She told stories about how even the darkest souls might inspire light if their lives are remembered rightly. Naming the alliance after him wasn't just symbolic, it was a promise that no one's story would be forgotten, and every life mattered. In the end, justice was carved in stone, not only through courts and laws, but through the change in hearts and minds. Luana's journey had come full circle, from victim to victor, from hunted to hero. She had built something that would outlast her, something powerful enough to stop the evil that had once tried to bury her alive. Her alliance stood as a shield for the vulnerable, a weapon against darkness, and a legacy of hope written in courage and truth. And somewhere behind prison bars, Kalembe's tears reminded the world that even the hardest hearts could break, and maybe, just maybe, begin to heal. Luana's journey came full circle when she returned to Dolemba, the very village where her nightmare began, and where she was once buried alive. This time, she came not as a victim, but as a beacon of hope and strength. The villagers gathered, some with tears, others with awe, as they witnessed a powerful moment, a new school for girls rising from the ground where she had almost lost her life. It was a symbol of rebirth, proof that darkness could give way to light. As she stood before the crowd, Luana's hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of everything she had endured and overcome. These same hands that had clawed through dirt in desperation now held the scissors to cut the ribbon officially opening the school. Every eye was on her, and every heart beat in rhythm with hers. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a warrior, a leader, and a symbol of unstoppable hope for every girl who had ever been told she was powerless. Boke stood firmly by her side, his presence a reminder of how far they had come together. From the moment he saved her life to now, his unwavering support had been a source of strength. Together, they represented not just survival, but the promise of justice and a better future. The school was more than bricks and mortar. It was a fortress against the horrors Luana had faced. It was a place where girls could learn, grow, and dream without fear. A place where their futures would no longer be stolen. The story of Luana spread far beyond Dolemba. News of her courage, her fight, and her new school captured the hearts of people worldwide. Social media buzzed with messages of support, with the hashtag "The Legend Lives On" trending across continents. Women and girls everywhere found inspiration in her story, realizing that no matter how dark life gets, there is always a way to rise again. Luana's name became synonymous with strength, justice, and hope. The school welcomed its first students with open arms. Girls who once feared the night now walked its halls proudly, Teachers, volunteers, and community leaders came together to build a safe, nurturing environment. Scholarships were set up for the poorest families, ensuring education was a right, not a privilege. Luana visited often, sharing her story and encouraging every girl to believe in herself. She taught them that their past didn't define them, and that with courage and support, they could break any chain. In her speeches, Luana often spoke about resilience and forgiveness. She reminded everyone that while revenge could consume the soul, justice and healing could free it. She honored those who had helped her along the way, spoke, the survivors who shared their voices, and even those who had once hurt her but now faced justice. Her message was clear: darkness can be overcome, and the future belongs to those who refuse to be broken. The school quickly became a symbol of transformation, a living monument to the power of hope. Parents from nearby villages brought their daughters, eager to give them a chance that Luana had fought so hard to create. The community flourished as more girls were educated and empowered, breaking cycles of poverty and abuse. Luana's vision had blossomed into reality, a world where girls could stand tall and claim their rightful place. Years passed, but the legend of Luana never faded. Her story was told around fires, in classrooms, and through generations. She had turned a grave into a foundation, and in doing so, she had sparked a movement that would change countless lives forever. Luana wasn't just a name. She was a symbol that no matter how deep the darkness, light could always return, brighter and stronger than before. If Luana's story touched your heart and reminded you that no matter how dark life gets, there is always hope, then let her courage inspire you to stand up against injustice in your own way. Every voice matters. Every action counts, whether it's supporting survivors, raising awareness, or simply believing in the power of resilience. Together we can create a world where no one has to suffer in silence. Remember, Luana's strength wasn't just about surviving. It was about fighting back, rebuilding, and becoming a symbol of hope for thousands of girls who deserve a brighter future. Her story is a powerful reminder that even when life tries to bury us, we have the power to rise again and make a difference. If you believe in this message of hope, justice, and unstoppable strength, please take a moment to like this video. Sharing it could reach someone who needs to hear this today, someone who needs to know they are not alone. And if you want to see more stories that inspire, empower, and shed light on real-life heroes, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for watching, for caring, and for being part of this journey. Together, we can help rewrite stories and bring hope where it's needed most. Stay strong, stay hopeful, and remember, you are never alone.